Welcome to the Creating Wealth and Wellness podcast. Your hosts, Amanda Kingsley and Tara Misseldine, team up to take you on a journey where freedom is cultivated through personal development, where women connect to fuel their futures, and where wealth is created as a byproduct of being well. Welcome back to Creating Wealth and Wellness. Hi,
I like that intro. Can you do that one every week?
Maybe I should create.
No, seriously, I really do.
Melody every time.
I like that one.
Okay, but seriously, we are back. The Creating Wealth and Wellness podcast with me, Tara Misseldine, and Amanda Kingsley. Who I'm so excited that I get to see you now while we are doing our Zoom recordings. It's really fun. It has such a different quality to me to actually look at your face while we're talking versus just hearing audio. Yeah, very funny. This is going to be the one we choose to put the video up on YouTube. Okay, so let's ramp into our show. I'm going to jump into the iTunes store and I'm going to share a review with all of you. If you have been listening to this podcast, or even if today's your first time, if you would actually go into iTunes, I know it's not super easy to do, but we'd be happy to help you if you jump on Facebook and let us know you're having a hard time. It is such a huge boon to this show when people offer us a rating and review on iTunes. It makes us so much more visible and also lets us know that we're not talking here in a vacuum. So thank you to everybody who has done it. There is a really beautiful one here from Maggie McCracken. And she says she loves this podcast. She counts down the days till the next one comes out. We are so easy to listen to, Amanda, because we work so well together. And it's really beautiful what she says about each of us. And I'm not going to go into it because I might start crying. So we'll go right into our gratitude.
One of my favorite people on the planet.
I can see why. We love you, Maggie.
She's a ridiculous human being. Absolutely.
Well, Maggie, if you get a chance and you're listening to this show, which sounds like you might be, jump into Facebook and let everybody else know how awesome you are too, because now we know. Okay, what's your gratitude this week, Amanda?
Let's see. I'm gonna go with online shopping. How about that?
We have kind of a theme coming up with our gratitudes today.
All the local people are cursing me. Shop local, shop local, shop local. Well, I gotta say, I'm a big fan of the online shopping. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, I got in a pair of skis. How cool is that?
That's amazing.
I ordered a pair of skis and they showed up in a big box. I was like, this is awesome because you know what? I want to ski with my kids. I'm not a massive skier. I don't need super fancy equipment, but I want to be out on the mountain with my kids. I have really old equipment and I don't have time to go to a ski shop and manage the whole negotiating and finding the best deal and knowing what I want. And I was like, bam, click, order, skis at my door. Yes. Now I can ski with my kids. So yeah, that's my, sorry, local shoppers. I do as the best I can when I can to support them, but I also love online shopping.
Yes, there may be very few things that either you or I is a purist about.
Yeah.
We do what we can, and then we also get skis in the mail, and that's okay.
That's right.
Okay, so my gratitude today is kind of in a similar vein, but mine is YouTube. Because
nice.
I have learned. It is such a treasure trove of learning for me. I totally love it. I love it so much more than social media. If I have time to blow, I'm going to learn how to make a better sourdough loaf or how to create my own DIY fish scale concrete tiles for my future conservatory. You name it, I have learned to do everything on YouTube. And I just love it. I'm so grateful that technology has come to that place of that kind of creative knowledge sharing that now I don't have to wait for somebody else to be so good at something that they get a book published about it that I have to try to find at Barnes & Noble. I can just literally do a 2-second search and learn anything I want. And that just feels so empowering to me.
It's pretty cool. And as a parent, it is another one of those blessings and curses, right? But multiple times my kids have said to me, how do I and I will literally say, let's find a video on YouTube.
Hmm. And
That's so
they're guaranteed to be one.
so cool.
Mhm.
Now, it's also a death trap for children in many ways.
Yes,
But
Aria doesn't use YouTube anymore on her own. She even says, like, what happens if you watch YouTube on your own? She's like, I watch Bad Baby and it rots my brain. So she does not watch YouTube anymore on phones or devices.
Funny.
It's forbidden.
All right. Topic time?
Yes. Okay. So today we are going to be talking about something that's pretty near and dear to my heart, and that is volunteering.
Love
So
it.
it is a huge topic. So I'm interested to see which little niche of it we dive into today. But you're the one that actually suggested that we talk about it today. So what's most top of mind for you regarding volunteering?
Well, this week, let's see, today is Friday, and this week on Tuesday, I have been meaning to volunteer for this program at my kids' school for years, like at least 2 years. After school program, parents volunteer to run a workshop. They define all the, like, whatever they want it to be, how many kids and what the cost is, and yada yada. And I just, every time it comes into the school folder, I'm like, I gotta do that. I gotta do that. I gotta do that. Well, I did it. And so my first
Yay!
class of a 6-week series this time was on Tuesday. And it felt so, and it was in the middle of a really busy, and it's a tricky word to use, but a really busy, jam-packed day. And it felt so good. It didn't feel like a burden. It felt like I was giving back. It felt like I was working with my community. It just felt so good. The after school club was called Random Acts of Kindness. So I have a group
Oh,
fifth grade girls, and we mapped out our random acts of kindness for the community, and watching them light up about it. So, like, I chose something that was important to me, my kids' school. And then within that, I chose something that was important to me, which was like a message I want to spread to children in their community. And so that makes volunteering not a burden, right? It's not like if I had volunteered to run the wrapping paper fundraiser, I'd be cursing myself, right? Because it's not something that's important to me. It's not something I want to do. And then volunteering suddenly becomes like less valuable because I'm really just checking it off the list. Like, I don't actually want to do it.
right.
And so that to me is one of the keys of like volunteering, right? It's like honing in on what you love and what you're good at, and finding a way to be of service in your tribe.
Right,
Um,
right. So
so yeah.
there is something that has kind of surfaced for me as an angle that I want to talk about here, and that is the sort of preconception that a lot of people have that it's not volunteering unless it's altruistic, and
Hmm.
um, I do not subscribe to that belief. Like I don't think that it doesn't count if there is a payoff for you. And
Yeah,
I mean,
great.
obviously not like a financial thing, because then it's not volunteering, but every single thing, and this speaks very, very closely to what you're talking about. But I have done so much volunteering. And as a matter of fact, it was a almost maybe an addiction that I had to really redefine what my capacities were, especially once I had Aria. Because, I was like a 70, 80 hour a week entrepreneur. And a lot of that was revenue generating work for my businesses. And a lot was actually engaging. I was serving on like 7 different boards and committees. So that meant that I was out at meetings all the time. And sometimes they were kind of like emotionally and intellectually demanding. And there's always been a huge payoff for me to be included in that kind of work.
Mm.
And the payoff is that it's very validating when I feel like my ideas are useful, or that I get to help shape the mission or the productivity of something that I care about. I have joined boards and committees simply because I've been really interested in how the inner workings of something work, which I'm unfamiliar with. Like the one that takes
Mm.
the most of my time right now, I serve on a board of trustees for a cooperative charter school here in
Right.
Massachusetts. And I took on an extra year, so I'm closing in on my third anniversary of serving on this board of trustees. And last year, they also sort of elected me to be the chair and president of the governance committee. Um, and I had no idea how anything about charter schools worked prior to joining this board. And I was very, very intrigued um, because when I joined it, I was a brand new mom. And I'm like, oh, I would love to know a little bit more about the education system and the inner workings of it's a cooperative charter school, but it's a public charter school. So there's sort of like multiple layers on top of public schooling. And now I get to know like all of the inner behind the scenes workings of the public school and the charter school system. So it's been super cool. And that payoff has been worth it to me in terms of relationships that I have built through volunteering, because people who volunteer, and I'm not to say this like not narcissistically, but it's a certain caliber of person who will give of themselves like that.
Mm.
And so it makes you feel great. And there's nothing wrong with that. You meet awesome people, and there's definitely nothing wrong with that. You learn really awesome things, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. So, but I have had people kind of share this concept with me that like they're not appreciating their own volunteer service because they got something out of it. So it's almost like
Wow,
they
that is
they minimize it, and I think that's so backwards. I think that
so backwards.
so backwards.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
Like it makes me physically uncomfortable.
Right. And I mean, it speaks to a deeper, a systemic problem with our own self-worth and the way we value our own contribution in the world and what we bring to the table, I think. But it's not uncommon. It's not
Wow.
uncommon.
That yeah, see, that's something that never would have come to mind for me. Ever, ever, ever. So I'm so glad you brought it up. It's really fascinating. And it's that similar to the concept of like if there's no sacrifice, if you're not working really hard for it, you don't deserve it.
Like
Like,
somehow you didn't earn it if you didn't have to like put blood, sweat, and tears and stuff into
yeah,
it.
really interesting stuff that brings up.
Yeah, totally.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's an
And
interesting angle that came up for me today.
what is this? What's it for those people who really feel like a diehard truth in that, and that it has to be this unselfish act? Um, what is that serving in them, right? Like what that believing that truth, what is it serving in them? I'd just be so curious to have that conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it works on the when someone's kind of deciding whether or not to offer their volunteer service, and also in reflection back on volunteer service, because I've this is most memorable to me in certain conversations that I had with people when I won this kind of prestigious it wasn't even an entrepreneurial award. It was like a local leadership award. It's called 40 Under 40. And there were comments. I got the impression that in order to win that award and even be nominated, you have to be at a certain level of like civic and volunteer service. So every single person who wins that award serves on multiple committees and boards of nonprofits. And so that kind of volunteer service is sort of a prerequisite for that kind of recognition. And I thought it was interesting that it seemed to like, oh, well, now that I've won this award, because I was involved in all of that volunteer service, it's like now I have been paid for my volunteer service, and it was sort of a means to an end,
whoa.
and like this weird level of like subconscious dismissive guilt or something that like, oh, well, I didn't really volunteer because I got paid with the recognition of winning this prestigious
Wow.
award. So it was like this really
Mind
interesting
trip.
dynamic. Yeah, it was a little bit weird.
Ah,
And just more interesting than weird, I would say. Um, Yeah.
It's
So
so interesting too, because if you're, let's say you are running an organization and you're putting together a board of committee members, or you are running a nonprofit and you have a section of that requires volunteers, like, who do you want to volunteer for you? Like, you want people who have some sort of self-interest in that, like, it lights them up, like it sparks something in them that contributes to your project.
right.
Like, so yeah, that's the backwards part to me, is like, I would want the exact opposite. Like, I would want people who have something to gain from it, because they're going to give that much more to it.
And kind of
Now,
that idea of like, if you want something done, ask the busiest person that you
yeah.
Every board and committee that I have ever served on has been composed almost entirely of very busy volunteers.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
people with like an enormous amount of extra time on their hands tend not to actually be the
It's
ones that are
true.
volunteering to move the
Yeah.
world forward.
Right.
So I also find that really interesting.
So I'm curious if we can leave listeners with some tools for deciding whether or not to volunteer for something.
Cool. Yeah.
Like, what are some of the things you would ask of yourself or process when making a decision? Because, like, and that came to me because you said the busiest people always get asked to serve. And I've definitely been asked to serve things that I have ultimately said, no way, this is not the right project for me. But how do we make that decision? How do our listeners make that decision when asked to participate in projects, or when seeking out volunteer?
Yeah, so I have a few that spring immediately to mind, and one is to be realistic about what your capacity is. You know, don't overstretch yourself, because there's actually it's more destructive to take on a role that you suddenly have to give up and then leave a group scrambling to replace your value. That's way worse than saying no and allowing someone else to step in from the beginning. Let's see. Also, ask questions of the people who are already involved. You know, it might be a 2-hour board meeting, but then what are the other additional requirements or guidelines that are, you know, asked of everyone that serves on the board? Is there, you also get encouraged to serve on an additional committee within the board, so that's going to add another 2 hours, and then like several hours of weekly homework and huge email threads. Like, just try to get as crystal clear about what the expectations are of that service. And I mean, some people, I tend to really enjoy ongoing volunteering, which is why I opt or have opted in the past to serve on different boards and committees, because it's ongoing. It's a learning experience for me. Okay, so that actually feeds into like, what do you actually want out of a volunteering experience? If it's a nice little dopamine and self-worth hit, then maybe you might want to do something like help at an event, or like a one-off volunteering opportunity and not an ongoing commitment. Like, you know, basically agreeing to a 2-year term on a board is very different than like going and helping at your local kitchen or your pantry.
There's a different reward too, though.
Totally
like, I
different.
serve on the local education council, and that is different year length terms, 1, 2, 3. Like, I don't know if anyway. But when you enter into a volunteer position like that, where you know it's a 2-year term, there's such a different reward from that, and such a different expectation. And so, yeah, to really understand what that is so important, and to be willing to stretch your comfort zone, right? Because sometimes it's really scary to sign up for a 2-year term, but there's a different you're able to give and be of more value when it's a longer commitment like that. You're able, because if there's a committee that's getting new volunteers every year, like, how much are they able to put out, right? And so you're giving in a totally different way. And so maybe stepping out of your comfort zone sometimes is okay, to go like, 2 years, can I make the commitment to this thing I believe in or not?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting fine line of knowing what you oh, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, darn it. It was really
I was talking and talking and talking.
No, it wasn't that. Was because I looked down at my notes of the show.
But it is, I mean, the same themes are always going to come up for us, I think, are often going to come up for us. It's like, is this in alignment with who I am, what my purpose is in the world, and how I want to contribute? How does it either serve or detract from the other projects in my life, be they family or work or anything, self-care, whatever they are. But it's always the same. What's my intention? What's my goal? What would be the best case scenario? What would be the worst case scenario? Those themes are like just going to keep coming up over and over again because they're so important in how we live like a meaningful life.
Totally. And my closing thought came back to me.
Oh, yay!
It was in reference to you saying like, know when to push yourself. And the fine line that I think is like absolutely critical when you're thinking about this kind of volunteering opportunity or commitment. And that is to know where pushing into your growing edge stops and where I should say no starts. So I would like to end on that. Sometimes the best thing you can do for an organization that needs help is to say no because you're not the right person for the job.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, let's end this beautiful episode. I loved this conversation. Let's end with our asks.
Sweet. You started with YouTube and I'm going to end with YouTube because I am now putting our podcasts on a YouTube channel.
Woohoo!
People can subscribe to that. At this point, I'm just playing with it on my own channel. So if you go to Amanda Kingsley, there's a whole playlist of of our podcasts. And then we will decide moving forward based on this little experiment of me putting it on my playlist, how we want to market and use that from its own entity, which is Creating Wealth and Wellness. So if you start by subscribing there, we can sort of play with it and decide where we want to take it as a unit.
Yeah, and let us know maybe on the Facebook page or something if YouTube audio is useful. Does anyone find it useful? I know I do, so I'm interested. Okay, and my ask, I am looking for a book about a particular topic, and I want some recommendations, and that is codependency.
Ooh.
So I'm not necessarily self-diagnosing myself, but I've overheard a couple very intriguing conversations, and I really just want to know more about this topic and this psychology. So if anybody has a really good book on codependent psychology or codependency, I would love to know some recommendations. I just want to dive in and learn a little bit about it. So cool. There you go. That's that. All right. Till next time, Miss Kingsley.
Thanks for joining us for another episode. If you haven't already done so, please do us the honor of leaving a rating and review on iTunes and check in with us on social. Amanda Kingsley is a work-from-home mother of 3. Her mission is to empower others to live fuller lives. Learn more about her at her website, amandastarkingsley.com. Tara Missildine is a passionate entrepreneur founding several businesses over the last 15 years. She's currently living the adventure of being a CEO, mom, and collaborative coach. Find her at allin.life.